At least 50% of this, in my mind, is who else is investing in the round. And to pull off a really great round, you got to create the perception that other people are investing, or at least on the cusp of investing, and use that to get other investors excited and interested. I'm Mike, I'm the founder of Wealthsimple. We make investing really easy for people. I think the reason I was asked to come here and speak today is we're a very new company. We've been around for about 2 years. And in the last 2 years, we've raised $32 million in 2 rounds. So we raised a $2 million seed round when we launched the business back in May of 2014, and raised a pretty big $30 million Series A halfway through last year. So had quite a bit of experience raising money recently, and love to talk about helping other startup founders looking to kind of build especially their first round of capital, how to put it together. Because in my experience over doing 2 rounds in the last 2 years, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there that put people astray. How we raised $2 million in 2 weeks. Catchy title for the first part of this. So for me, it boils down to just a few things. One, which I think most people miss, you got to find your lead investor early. While having an awesome team and an awesome product in a really big market are all things that matter, actually the biggest thing that matters to most investors, especially early on, is who else is investing. So if you can find a way to solve that question and answer that question early, you're going to put yourself in really great shape to raise a round. Okay, so that's one. 2 is you got to have a really broad perspective about who your investors could be. There are a lot of usual suspects out there. If you guys don't read, I think you should go to the Startup North blog. They have this great post called One Post to Rule Them All. I think it lists just about every single active angel investor, in Canada, if you want a great place to start. But that's not the only place. You got to have a really broad perspective about what's possible, and they don't have to be in technology is kind of another thing. I'll get more to that in a bit. Most decks suck. Make yours good. It's not that hard to put in a little extra effort to make it come off polished like you've really thought it through. Make sure you do that. Set a deadline. A lot of people just kind of go into the process and they hope it's going to work, and it ends up dragging out for 6-9 months, which you really should be investing in building your business and operating. You got to create some time bounding so that it happens quickly. And if you can, and this is not for everybody, is put some money in yourself, especially if this is your first round. It goes a long way to show your kind of conviction and alignment with your investors if you're able to do that. So A, find your lead investor early. I said this before, but really at least 50% of this, in my mind, is who else is investing in the round. And to pull off a really great round, you got to create the perception that other people are investing, or at least on the cusp of investing, and use that to get other investors excited and interested. It shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. You should be evaluated on the merits of the business and the merits of the team, but the reality is it's often very much a FOMO experience or a popularity contest, and just be honest about that and try and lock up a lead investor. In our case, we found a really wonderful investor, a guy named Joe Canavan. I think we were his first ever angel investment. And Joe was the CEO of a couple big asset management companies in Canada, had done exceptionally well for himself, had made some real wealth, and he was really excited about startups. But he wasn't a tech investor, he wasn't an angel guy, he wasn't part of any angel groups. And we went to Joe and we said, we got a warm introduction to Joe through a mentor of mine. And I came to him and I said, here's what we want to do. We want to make investing something that you know a lot about. We want to change it and make it easy for everybody and accessible to young professionals in particular that don't have a lot of money today, but will someday. And he immediately got the vision of what we wanted to do. He was really excited about the team we'd put together, and he was willing to be the first kind of check in the business. So if you can create someone like this, who isn't from the typical community, but has the sort of wealth to put to work in startups, and is really gets the industry that you're trying to tackle or the problem that you're trying to solve. It can be a really powerful combination for you. And in this case, your angels don't have to be in tech. Joe was not a tech guy. I think since he made an investment with us, I think he's invested in 10 other technology companies, but we were his first. And I think that there's a 10x order of magnitude number of wealthy angels out there that are excited about startups, want to put money to work in startups, but aren't part of the angel community. And especially, these are folks that I think you can get a hold of, especially if you're trying to tackle a problem in their space. You can use the fact that you're trying to solve big problems that they might be really familiar with as a way to get in the door and have a great coffee chat with them. I think make sure you have a really broad perspective about who could support you and who could be an investor in your business. Yeah, and just again, in Wealthsimple's case, we raised our first round of $2 million from 15 different investors. 2/3 of them came from finance, and only 1/3 from tech. So just to make it a little bit more real for people, this was very much our experience. It included people from banks that had built asset management businesses, but not really those kind of from the usual suspects of tech angels and investors out there. Most decks suck. Make yours good. I think, I've seen decks that run 30 pages that have way too much detail. I think you should keep it really short and concise. I put down 5 things that I think any good deck should have. What do you do? In a really easy to understand, intuitive, 1 or 2 sentences. How big is the market you're attacking? So for us, it was, we make investing easy for people. We're attacking a $3 trillion market in the Canadian context and much more than that kind of globally. Team, we're 3 of us at the time. We had just founded and sold a Y Combinator business down in San Francisco. We're about to do it again, and this is why kind of we're going to be successful. So got to have a great team story, growth plan. Nobody's attacking this space in Canada, and if you look everywhere else in the world, there's actually a massive opportunity and massive traction behind companies that are tackling making finance easy and accessible to everybody else. So, great traction story. 5, competition. While the big banks are big and scary, we think we can carve out a niche where they can't make a profit. They're not actually really good at building great technology products that people love. We think that's how we're going to win. So if you can create a really compelling 5-point kind of story, tell it as a great deck, and make sure you get really good at kind of rehearsing that story and telling it to people. This is a slide we used in the deck just to show you how we showed our market segment, right? Investing historically had 2 options. You could either hire a full-service financial advisor, but to do that, you needed a lot of money because most of them have account minimums that start at $100,000 or as much as $1 million or more. You had to pay a lot for that sort of service, and it was very high touch. This person would take you golfing. They take you to lunch once a quarter. If you didn't want that, or you couldn't afford it, your only other option was to do it yourself. Okay? Now, that was really easy because there's no real account minimums. You could get started pretty quickly, low fees, but to actually do it, you needed to know a lot about investing and to feel totally confident to manage your own money. Huge knowledge gap in that kind of side of the market. You can see we're talking about a $1.3 trillion market with a massive gap. We saw that opportunity, and this kind of made it really compelling to investors that see exactly the sort of problem that we're trying to tackle. Set a deadline. I see, it's so important, especially in the early days when you're trying to get things off the ground, that you're focused on just building and executing against the business. Focus all your time up front in finding a lead investor. Find your Joe, the guy that we had, that his first check kind of in the door. Once you have him, use him or her, and I think more increasingly female funders should be a part of these conversations. So it's, but whoever that person is, once you have them, use that to create a deadline. Say, hey, we're raising, if you're going to reach out to other investors, hey, we're raising a round. We've got our lead in the door. We're planning to close in the next 2 weeks. So if you're interested, we're working on something big, but now is the time to really get together. We think you're going to be excited about it. And if you can use that storyline to force a timeline, you're going to put yourself in really great shape. It might take more than 2 weeks to close the round, and that's okay. But you want to keep the timeline as short as possible, because any time that it just drags on is time away from actually building your business. And lastly, I'd say if you can afford it, there's actually mixed perspectives about this. A lot of people would disagree with me on this, but I think it's a really powerful statement. If you can afford it, I'd put in a little bit of money alongside your investors. I think it's a big signal to investors that you believe, you have big conviction in the business that you're building, that you're totally aligned with them on the cap table, and you're going to be a responsible steward of their capital. And I think the other thing is very few people do this. So when you're constantly trying to stand out, meeting with investors, seeing great teams and great businesses all the time, and you want to find ways to be distinctive, this is another small way to do that. And it's just a small signal that I think can help build more trust with your investors. So I encourage people to think about that. Great other sources. I mentioned Startup North. Check it out. How to Raise Money. Paul Graham. If you guys don't read Y Combinator and kind of Paul Graham's essays, highly encourage you guys to do it if you're trying to build a business. It's a wonderful source of knowledge. And find a mentor. Find other founders that have been through it. It seems like a black box if you've never been through it before, but it's not that. It's not rocket science. So there are people out there that are totally willing to help you with your deck, help you with kind of introductions, and people that are very committed to seeing the ecosystem succeed here and want to be helpful to all of you.